Hello everyone. Today I will discuss about few common mistakes that candidates make in coding interviews and how to avoid them. Trust me, avoiding these mistakes can set you apart from other candidates and help you get to the next round. So let's just dive in. The first mistake that I will talk about is writing the solution without creating unit tests first. Whenever you are presented with a problem, don't just start writing the solution without creating unit tests. It takes too long to test your code manually by calling the function with various inputs. It's also hard to maintain under severe time pressure. Let's see what do I mean by that. By the way, I will use Python to explain the examples, but the principles will apply for any other language. Let's assume you are provided with this parenthesis sequence validation problem. Now, after thinking a little bit, don't just start writing the solution like most candidates do. What everyone typically does is to call the function manually after each changes to test their code. Suppose you have come up with this solution here, and after that you just want to test your code, right? So if you do it this way, you have to call the function with various inputs multiple times. This is not very efficient. It's also hard to handle corner cases systematically this way. Instead, before starting the implementation, you should create a list of unit tests like this. It's just a list of equality checking statements between the function's output and the expected output. It will print true if the test case passes and false if it fails. Trust me, it will save you from a lot of stress when you need to handle various test cases while analyzing your code. Writing test cases like that can also help cover corner cases systematically. Okay. So the next mistake is not thinking about corner cases and making assumptions. After you get the question and make a list of typical inputs and outputs, you should ask questions about those test cases. Like, what if the inputs are negative? What if there are duplicates? What if the input list is empty? Something like that. Missing these edge cases can lead to incorrect implementations. In real life development as well, vague implementations are so common, and assuming things can lead you to making costly mistakes. Let's see an example as well. This problem asks you to return the max products between two numbers from a given list of integers. So the first solution that comes to mind is we can just sort the list and take the last two elements in the sorted list and multiply those two to get the answer. Easy, right? If your answer is yes, then you are wrong. With this solution, we have assumed something that wasn't clarified in the problem statement. Can you find out what that is? I will give you a couple of seconds. As I said, let's ask questions about the inputs. What if the inputs are negative? You see, if the list has negative numbers, our solution won't work. We assume that numbers will be positive, but it's not specified, right? So this test case will fail here. We also did not handle empty list situation or a list with only one element, right? So the correct solution will be something like that. So here we are handling the empty list, and then we are taking actually the product of the last two numbers and the first two numbers in case we have two negative numbers and the product is larger, and then we are just returning the maximum product, right? So this will cover all the scenarios. Now let's move on to the next mistake. This is an interesting one actually. One of the biggest mistakes candidates make is running their code way too often instead of thinking it through. This shows that you are relying too much on trial and error rather than logical problem solving. You see, interviewers want to see how well you think, not how fast you debug. In real world development, testing code isn't always simple due to factors like staging, server limitation, external API dependencies, etc. Complex integrations might make running tests expensive and time consuming. That's why actually many FANG companies typically use whiteboards for on-site interviews or Google Docs for online ones. In those cases, you don't even have any option to run your code. Let's consider an example. You have to write a function to count how many times a substring appears within a given string. Imagine you implemented this part so far, and there are still some test cases that are failing. At this point, you might be tempted to try a bunch of new examples to debug your code, right? But that's a mistake. It's a poor strategy to debug your code by trying a bunch of new test cases. And never ever use print statements like this. You see, this is just so bad. If you can debug few lines of code that you wrote yourself without running it bunch of times or printing stuff on a screen, it sends a bad signal to the interviewers. Instead, just focus on the logic by dry running the code in your head. So while you are facing this kind of issue where you know that the logic is so simple, but still you are facing errors, in cases like this, there are only few places that you need to look to find the logical errors here. That would be loop or variable initialization, variable assignment, and comparison operations. Can you identify where the logical error is? I will give you a couple of seconds here. So here we have initialized the loop in a way that misses the last element of the main string. We have to add 1 here to make it work. Now this will include the last element while checking the substring with this list slicing operation. So let's have a go. You see, it works now. To develop this habit of running code in your head, you can use paper pencil to write the solution. This habit will make you a better developer, as debugging and testing will always be as convenient as hitting the run button in your IDE, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next mistake. This is a subtle but critical one. Candidates who finish their solution but don't maintain code quality and efficiency often receive a negative judgment. Interviewers are looking for developers who care about writing readable and optimal code, not just any code. A suboptimal solution may work, but it could be significantly slower or more resource intensive. Also, if the code is not readable, it might cause issues within the team. That's why you should name your variables and functions as descriptively as possible. Also, try to keep the logic simple so that you can explain it better. And always, after implementing the solution, explain it to the interviewer. Mention if there are any limitations and possible improvements. Show that you care about the quality of your code, not just the task at hand. Showing this matters more than actually solving the problem. Okay, so there you have it. Avoid these mistakes and you will have a much better chance of standing out in your coding interviews. If you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for more coding interview tips in the future. See you in the next video.